garden friends, welcome on back. We are going to talk the 19 most common seed starting mistakes many gardeners make and how you can avoid them. So let's get chatting about seed starting. So yes, there are a lot of mistakes that can be made when you seed start. Seed starting is one of my favorite things to do in gardening. There's just something about watching that little seedling pop up from the soil and grow into a plant and nurturing it along the way. This is slow gardening. Yep, you can go out and buy this plant at a garden center already growing and plop it in your garden and enjoy it. But if you're like me and you like the old-fashioned, money-saving, budget-friendly gardening, then seed starting is for you. And there's such a wide variety of plants that you can grow from seed that you can't normally find at a garden center. So yeah, I wanted to talk about these mistakes. I have to put my glasses on to read my notes to make sure I don't miss anything. Yeah, over the years, I've made many of these mistakes, and I know the frustration that can happen. Okay, I'm going to starting seeds too early. You know, it really is tempting to start seeds right out of the box. January, the seed starting or the seed catalogs are arriving, and it is so tempting to just dig in and do it. Everybody's done with the old year, starting the new year, and January, for some reason, everybody wants to jump into gardening. They're already tired of winter. I know I am. I don't like winter, but a lot of other people do. But anyways, don't start too early because your plants will get leggy. They will become stressed because they really needed to go out in the garden sooner, or they become root bound and you have to pot them up, so they're extra work. Keeping them going indoors and not become stressed. A stressed plant will be struggle all the time out in your garden. So it'll be more susceptible to pests, etc. And that's across the board. So check your last frost date and read the package, seed packet, and go back from there, and it'll tell you the best time to start seedlings. Now, some things take longer to come into bloom, like petunias, so I need to start those a bit sooner, get them going, and then pot them out. But there's most things you just go by what's on the packet. So also, it is not your zone that determines when you start seeds. I see that all the time. I saw that on Pinterest or something about what seeds to start in January in zone 6. That is misleading. And I'll tell you why. Your zone does not determine your first and last frost date. And that is what you go by when you're starting seeds, especially your last frost date. Then you count back from that. And that can be different across the same zone. I have friends in Houston, Texas. Their last frost date, I think, is the end of February. Mine is the end of May. I have family that lives up in Oregon, same zone, 8B, but their last frost date is the end of April. So you can see how it can differ across the same zone, and that is not what determines when you can start seeds. So I have a whole video on what the USDA zones do tell you and what they don't, and I will link it in the description box below. So starting seeds too late, that's something that can happen too. So some things that need longer, and that's what I was talking about, my petunias. My petunias need to be started sooner because they take so long to come into flower. And I have a short growing season. Even though I'm in zone 8B, my growing season doesn't start till the end of May, and it can be cut off the 1st of October. Our first average frost date is usually October 15th by then, but it can come sooner. So things like my tomatoes and peppers, tomatoes I get a crop by mid-August, but peppers I won't get something until September. So you see how, if you start too late, it would be kind of pointless for me to plant something out that I started too late. So not reading the seed packets, big mistake. They contain a wealth of information for every plant. So they have details like germination time, planting depth, that's important, light requirements, and all of that. So you take a moment, read it, and then you're not guessing and set yourself up for disappointment. So using old or poor quality seeds. There is a standardization process for seeds. So when I talked to you about my dollar store seeds, I think it's when I did the how did they turn out, and I'll show you one example. These were the dollar store lettuce seeds I bought. I started them with you, and then I did an update a few weeks later. But I told you in that all seeds sold in the American market anyways, they have to meet a standard germination test. So I wouldn't say it's poor quality seeds are sold. I would say, well, I guess if you sold from bought from an independent person who didn't have to have theirs tested. But yes, poor quality could be maybe you didn't protect them well, and so they got damaged somehow. I know I'm not the best about saving seeds properly, proper storage, so that could damage them. But old seeds. So if you want to check for viability of old seeds, do the paper towel or the coffee filter test, and that's where you put the seeds between on a moist paper towel or on a moist coffee filter. I fold mine over, put it in a paper plastic bag, like a sandwich bag, and I put it on top of the refrigerator, and I check it every couple days. And then usually on the back of the package of seeds, it'll tell you the expected germination time frame, like 1 week, 2 weeks, or what have you. And so you could check it and see what kind of germination you get. And I have even, now not most people tell you to do this, I have even planted the little seeds that do germinate. And go ahead. A lot of people just throw it away and then know, well, okay, if I only had 50% germination, then I do double the seeds, and then I'll know how many I'm going to get. But I go ahead and give it a shot. Instead of throwing them away, go ahead and plant the seedlings that sprout. I've done that with my delphiniums many times, and it works beautifully. So using the wrong soil. Okay, so that is, I don't want to say relative, but that's an important point. Now, if you've been here much, you know I don't use seed starting mix. I don't use seed starting mix because it's not necessary. Many seed starting mixes are very poor quality, and they really won't work that well for you. You're going to be fighting it. So I use my DIY potting soil and or a regular potting soil, a good quality, from the nursery. Works fine. But you know what? And it's normally not recommended to use your garden soil. And that's because usually there could be pathogens, it's too heavy, etc. Now here's a thought. During COVID, I was watching a show and they were helping poorer folks down in Africa and nations like that to plant their own food. And they started in garden soil, just the soil they had out there, because down there they don't have a nursery to go buy potting soil. So they just used what they had, and that was the soil there in the ground. And you know what? They grew their food. Yes, you probably wouldn't get as great of germination or survival, but if you have plenty of seeds, if that's all you have, then go for it. Now, a lot of people will use leaf mold and compost to mix in it to help loosen it, etc., and that works too. So don't be afraid if all you have is your garden soil. You may not have as great a germination or survival, but it will work, because you know what? When we plant out directly, that's what we're planting in, right? Right in the soil. So yeah, that was just my little caveat on that, planting seeds in the wrong soil. Okay, using dirty containers. Yes, if you, like I have tons of containers that I reuse every single year, and I wash them with hot soapy water and then rinse them well and set them out to dry. I've also, if I need to, if I've had a problem with disease or pests, sometimes I will go ahead and give them a little soak in a 9-to-1 ratio of bleach with water. And that is 9 parts water, 1 part bleach. Like, you know what I mean? So that works too, to sanitize your containers, because you can get the seedlings especially are susceptible to any disease that may be carried over in your containers, but also spider mites that can live on the container. That sounds weird, but yeah, it can happen. Planting at the wrong depth. Now this goes back to reading your packets of seeds, because it will tell you on the packet for a specific variety whether you want to plant on the surface and just, no, I want to say harden, press them into the soil, and because some need light to germinate, some need darkness, so they could be planted deeper. And the standard thought for planting seeds is to plant twice the depth of the size of the seed. But many seeds, that is not what you do. They want to be on the surface of the soil. Now here are some geums I sowed, and you can see that on top I have this granulated cork. And yes, if I can't remember what the depth was, but I would sift some of my potting soil, which this is what I have this for, and it would come out very fine, because this is more finer than this sifter. This is the general sifter I use to sift my compost, etc. So I get out all the wood chips. And then when I go to cover the soil, I'll sift again with this and sift it over the tray of seeds. And that will cover them to the depth that they should be covered. Some it's very little. If tiny seeds, very little. Like poppies, when I never grow poppies indoors or even winter sow them. I spread them right out in the garden, seed themselves in the fall, and they come up every year and do beautifully. So don't be afraid to throw your poppies right out there in the fall or winter in the ground. So yes, planting at the wrong depth. That goes back to the seed packet reading. So not labeling your seed trays. I just took in a container. I did something like this of seeds. I thought it was petunias. And then when I got out here, I saw my open package of Bampton verbena. And I thought, oh yeah, that is what I put in that packet. So here I was thinking, I'm going to go mark it on there, make a little tag. And I shared with you, let me see if I see any in here, how to make, and it was at my viewer's suggestion, little plant tags from cutting, sour cream tubs, cottage cheese tubs. They make perfect little tags, yogurt tubs. They even suggested, I haven't done that one yet, cutting up old milk jugs. I'm not seeing any of my tags. They must be all inside. But that was really working great, because I was just washing up, let me see tags that came in from pots of stuff in that I bought at the nursery. So yes, boy, they must all be in the house. Oh, I know, they're in my winter sowing jugs out there. Okay, so that's the big mistake, not labeling your seeds. Okay, ignoring light requirements. Yes, light is very important for growing strong, sturdy plants. And that's why I said, did I already say this? Well, I'll say it again, just because it's important. Don't start seeds on your windowsill until after the spring equinox, because they need strong light and long light, daylight. And that you won't get it if you're only doing it on a windowsill until after the spring equinox. And then you can very successfully start in your windowsill. But I start under grow lights. So I use grow lights because I love them. I have the cheap LEDs, warm and cool. I just put my seedling trays up close to the light. These were grown under the light. The lettuce was grown under the lights. I have a whole seed starting blog post, indoor seed starting, and I'll link to that below. But yes, you need to pay attention to the light requirements. And then you'll have strong, sturdy plants. They'll get tall and leggy, and they'll start to become yellowed if they aren't getting enough light. And so that's a big mistake, ignoring that. So ignoring your temperature requirements. Yes, some things like it much warmer before they will germinate. And they need at least 70 degrees, 70 to 80 degrees. So there's other things that will bloom in the cool weather, and that is a whole specific topic unto itself, but it will tell you on the seed packets normally what the kind of temperatures they need. Now, things like tomatoes and peppers, basil, all of those need very warm temperatures, and a heat mat comes in handy unless you have a very warm room, or you wait till later to get those going. Yeah, but the heat mat really works well. I have two, and I do start them on heat mats. Though, with things that don't have to have that hot of a temperature, if you don't have heat mats, you can start them very successfully. They will germinate slower, but it has been found that seeds that have been started on a heat mat and ones without a heat mat, the ones that have not been started on the heat mat catch up to the ones within a couple weeks that were started on a heat mat. So just keep that in mind if you don't have them. But you can successfully start tomatoes, etc., without a heat mat. You just have to make sure it's a very warm room, and do water with warm water. Don't water with cold water if you have those type of seeds. Okay, overwatering, huge mistake many make. And what overwatering does to seedlings is it blocks out or reduces the oxygen level in the soil, and then they drown basically. And also it encourages fungus. It encourages fungus gnats. You can get fungus gnats even without overwatering, but that's a whole nother thing. And I have a video and blog post on that. And mold, it can encourage mold, which can kill your plants right away. So avoid overwatering. Usually I can lift a tray and feel if it needs watering. Sometimes you look at it and it'll look very dark. It'll look wet. So you can press on it. You can't always tell that way. And I don't like sticking my whole finger down in there. So I also use a moisture meter. And that works really well. So underwatering, that's the other one you can do. If you let them dry out too much, I've even had this lettuce wilt a little bit, and I'm like, oh no, I got to water it. So yeah, that can be a hazard too, especially if it's a very warm room that you have your plants in, and if you have a fan blowing. I do have a fan usually set up to blow gently across the plants, and that helps them to excrete an enzyme that makes them grow stockier and sturdier. So with that air blowing, it can dry it out, especially the surface, but the moisture meter will help you to determine. I enjoy checking my plants daily, so yeah, that helps a lot too. Now, a lot of people, and it's not in here, they will use a humidity dome until the seeds germinate. I don't always do that. It's not absolutely necessary. If you use vermiculite or cork on top, that both inhibits fungus growth and it helps retain moisture in the soil. So that's just a hint on that. So overcrowding. Now, you'll notice in here, I do tend to seed things a little heavily, but I am good about potting up. Now you see how right there's a big group of the seeds. These are already getting their second sets of leaves, and I'm going to pot them up, and I'll divide them out, and they will do just fine. But if this was even more crowded, then the roots would start to entangle below, and then it would be harder to get them apart, and it could have a little more stress that way. So not thinning, that kind of goes with the overcrowding. No, it isn't. You don't need to overseed. So when I plant in these, most of the time I only use one seed. If you have good germination rate, and usually that's 80%, you've got a lot of plants in here coming up. If you want to do 2 seeds, that's fine. But yeah. And that's where checking for germination, if you're worried about the seeds being old, that comes in handy. So not thinning. When you've got them coming up, I transplant. Even if I put them in those little different cells, I don't cut. Some people will let them grow. They'll cut back all but one strong seedlings. To me, that's a waste of seeds. But if you got plenty and you want to do it that way, it works well. So, but if you don't, then they struggle. They compete. And yeah. So you can use little scissors, snip them off, or little cutters, whatever works for you, or you can divide them like I do. So failing to provide good air circulation. Now the fan, that works very well, I was telling you about. But if you have everything too crowded and you don't have air circulation, then it can cause fungus, it can cause disease and damping off, etc. Not fertilizing at the right time. So especially seed starting mixes, they do have no nutrition in them, except for a few do have synthetic fertilizer in it. I prefer organic gardening, so I don't like using things that have synthetic fertilizers in it. Number one, it promotes too lush of a growth, which is more sensitive than to diseases, pests, especially pests. But if you're not using a seed starting mix or potting soil that has a synthetic in it, then when the plants get their second set of leaves, your seedlings, then you need to start fertilizing. I use a liquid organic fertilizer. I dilute it by half to a quarter. I start out at a quarter strength and then I upgrade it to a half a strength within a week or after a week. And I will fertilize once a week, usually. Okay, transplanting too soon or too late. Transplanting out in the garden, let's talk about. This is not dividing and potting up. Don't do that too late either. But if you are transplanting out in the garden, you do it too soon, the soil's not warm enough, or you could have a freak freeze, frost, then they could succumb to that, or it could weaken them. And a weakened plant in the early stages will be a plant that's weaker throughout its life. And then it will be one that has to fight off pests, has to fight off more diseases. It's just not as sturdy as a plant as one that you get out in the garden at the right time. So too late, that means you've let it stay in its little pot too long. It's probably root bound, or it's gotten too tall and leggy. So that is also a weaker plant. And so you're undermining yourself by doing those things. So not hardening off. Now I have a video where I show how I harden off. I'm not sure that it's very clear because I've had a couple commenters say, what did you do? Well, that's my whole point. A lot of people will have you take your cuttings out for when it's warmer enough, out for an hour, half an hour, bring them back in. Take them back out the next day, bring them back in. What I do is I will put them out in an area that's protected from the wind, basically, and it's shaded where it'll get morning sun, a little bit of morning sun where it won't cook them, but then it's afternoon shade. So in that area, you can just leave them out there and let them harden off without having to do the inside and outside and inside of traipsing back and forth. Excuse me. If you have a lot of seeds, that's a lot of work and it's off-putting, and I just don't have time for that. So a lot of times too, it helps for me that I have this greenhouse so I can put them out here. They can start getting used to more light, because no matter how good your grow lights are, the direct sunlight or out in the sun is better. That's why people used to use cold frames, and they still do, where you can shut it and open it every day. If you have a cold frame, that's a magnificent way to harden off. I have these two greenhouses. The one we built, this one was a kit from Sunshine Garden House. I absolutely love this. So anyways, yes, hardening off. You need to do that where you get them used to the outdoor conditions gradually, but successfully. So a huge mistake is people give up too soon, meaning you don't see germination, and you're just like, okay, what happened? Nothing is coming up. If you've done all of the above correctly, then you shouldn't have a problem. But sometimes some things take like up to 3 weeks, some longer to germinate. The seed package would normally tell you that. But even with like these seedlings, you'll see that I have big ones right here, and then I have a little tiny one over here. And then there's one just barely popping up right there. So they all germinated at different rates. So that can happen too. So seed starting successfully, it takes patience. It takes patience, it takes planning, it takes educating yourself. Now, these 19 seed starting mistakes are easily avoided, and I hope you found this list helpful and you have a great seed starting journey. And this is like the beginning of March, and it is not too late to start seeds. In fact, for some of you, this is perfect time. I'm not sure when the spring equinox is, but for those wanting to start on a windowsill, it is soon going to be time to go ahead and get those windowsills filled up, or anything near a window. I have a few windowsills. I was going to try some windowsill starting just to see how it went, and then I'll report back on that as well. And I won't start until spring equinox. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll link anything I think is pertinent in the description box below. I will also link the blog post for this, and I will have this list available for you to print, download and print. So that's over on the blog post. I will see you in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this today. I will also be soon updating you on my winter sowing. I have a lot of seeds coming up, and we'll see how they get through. We have this warm weather, and then we're going to have next Sunday, it's going to snow. So we'll see how they fare. I will see you in my next video.